make it better than yesterday. You can always find a way to start over again. When the sun rises, you can start over again. A new day, you can make it better than yesterday.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is your girl, Diamond. I am so excited about this show because this is somebody in community that I absolutely love. I love their spirit. I love when they are in the room. They just you know how you get around people and when they walk in the room, they just bring a certain light. This is one of those people for me. And I want to introduce y'all to Sybastian Smith.
Well, thank you, Diamond. Thank you for having me. Long time coming, right?
Exactly.
Long time coming, but I'm so excited to be here. We've known each other for what now? I don't even want to age us for many years. Yeah. And we equally bring that same energy in the room. When I see you, when I walk in the room and I see you, I'm like, oh, I gotta come red in here.
I love that. So one thing that I want to start off with, one thing that we have in common is that our ancestry and part of our upbringing is connected to Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so I want to talk about you growing up, like who was loving on you, who was, who was your family unit, who was the people that was taking care of you in the beginning?
Absolutely. So I think, like you said, you hinted to it. From Mississippi, we just do family different, right? We just do family different. And that's not to, throw shade or anything to any of my Southern other folks in states surrounding us. But Mississippi just does the South different. We do love different. We support each other different. Like I was raised, not only was my biological family, my family, but my neighbors, like that idea of being raised by a village was really my childhood and my life. Like I was raised by the neighbors and the candy lady down the street and all the things. So I have, kept those things really as a core part of who I am and how I show up. That's still that Southern hospitality that, sometimes the honorifics, even in our, community, I still am with the respect. So it's the yes, ma'am, the no, ma'am, the, all of the respect things that we come from. So, just growing up around being loved by other folks, I think it showed me how I can make family out of anything. Right? I can make family out of it's not just blood related. And I have taken that into, the way I do advocacy and the way I do this work and how I connect with other advocates and other folks and how we call each other family and why that feels real for me. Right? Because I was raised like that. I was raised that we were raised in a village. We were all raised together. So Mississippi just does life different sometimes and just does, love and acceptance. We're still working on it in some ways, but just does it differently,
I think what people don't understand, and I think that this kind of is an analogy for many things that people don't understand. Because I know when I go to different places around the country and I state that I'm from Texas, it's as soon as I say I'm from Texas, like where I live currently, they'll say something like, "Oh my God, is it bad?" There's like a immediate negative reaction, and for me, I know politically that I understand why that is, but I always feel the need to give you a little bit more context so you're not thinking that I'm down here and there's no community or there's no joy in my life. And I think Mississippi is an analogy of that because Mississippi has an even badder rap when it comes to conservatism and and racism. Mississippi is kind of one of those that people like, oh nah, I know it's crazy down there. But because of that extremity of racism, and because people don't understand that more Black people are in the South than anywhere in the United States, like the percentage of Black people is really, really high in Mississippi. And so when you go down there, because of that stark difference in regards to how racism shows up and how bold that from the other side, how bold racism can be, it puts us in a situation where we are tightly knit in our community. Tightly knit in how we take care of each other, tightly knit in how it's a well-oiled machine in how we share resources and how we do resources and how we do kind of community. And so when you go down there, where if you're not from Mississippi, you might think that, oh, it's more difficult. But when you go down there, it can be a little bit easier because of that segregation.
Yeah, it can be. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said, Mississippi is one of the blackest states in the U.S., right? And when you don't know that, you know, for some folks, it can be a culture shock because you go into those places and you see like a multitude of black families and black communities, but they're all striving. Like you get there and you got this idea from folks that's not from Mississippi of what it's like. Like even my partner is from New York, and we joked before in our relationship about, you know, her siblings saying things like, is there cotton fields still in Mississippi? Do everybody wear overalls and have a farm? I'm like, oh my, we don't have a clue at all. Yes, that's a part of our history, and those things still exist. However, folks are thriving and living and supporting each other directly in their communities because they have no choice. Number one. We had no choice when I grew up. We had no choice but to support and love on each other, because right outside of those city limits, just like in many other black, heavily populated black populations, one time, as soon as you get outside of those, those lines, then it's a whole nother atmosphere. It's a whole nother culture of folks around us. So even like in Jackson, where we're from, with JSU and all of the fame and all of the things, it is really centrally located. Everything around the black people right around that college. And the moment you step outside of those lines, then it's a whole nother life. So we have learned how to take care of each other.
Let's get a little bit more specific, because I have a little bit of experience in these kind of rural areas of Mississippi. So your family is kind of revolved around like Canton.
It is.
So my little Canton story that I have, a little trans Canton story. So where I was born and raised was Indianapolis, Indiana. And we ended up moving to Boston, Massachusetts for a couple of years, probably like 4 years, and then back to Indianapolis, Indiana. So I didn't get to come to Mississippi until I was 18. So when but all of my older family that I was around, all of them were from Leake County, Mississippi, Walnut Grove specifically. And so when I got older, and my parents, my grandmother who was born in Jackson, my mother who was born in Indianapolis, but because my mother was still connected to, my grandmother was still connected to my great grandfather, they would travel back and forth to Mississippi. So hearing about Mississippi when I was growing up was really, really common. So, and when I was like 2 weeks old, my mom took me down to Mississippi too. So when I got older and I went down to Walnut Grove, it definitely was a culture shock. And I was like, oh my God, I'm used to being in not a large city like I am now, like Houston, but Indianapolis was a city. It was also a black ass city. People think about Indiana in the whiteness of it, but there's a reason why Indianapolis was a stop on the Chitlin Circuit. It has a high percentage, like similar to the South, has a high percentage of black people when it comes to, which is abnormal for an up north city. And so, and which is why Madam C.J. Walker created her factory there, because it was a thriving black community there. So when I came down to Mississippi, I mean, this was rural that I hadn't experienced before. We're talking about, you got to push cows out of the road to get to driving, like dirt roads, and motherfuckers is eating clay, and it just was rural. Like it was, it was definitely a culture shock. And so I definitely felt super, super alone. They were definitely kind of objectifying me in the sense of like, oh my God, this is we never seen this trans person. Like it was a very that. But what I found very, very interesting, there is this club not far in the Canton area called Booty. And it was a straight little hole in the wall club, and for older people. And my homegirl, my cousin, she was a distant cousin, my cousin Bonnie Louise, she would take me there. And before one time she was telling me that she was going to take me there. And before she took me there, she was like, oh, well, hopefully we'll see Miss Carl. And so in my brain, I was like, who the fuck is Miss Carl? And why would I need to see them? And so what I realized is that there is a trans person in this area. And as a compromise in the community, not saying that this is right or not, but what I'm sharing this story is because there's almost this idea that we're not in these communities, but we are. And so this is their compromise in the context of the culture. Like, no, we know they don't want to be called a mister, but maybe I'm not comfortable with this, And not saying this right or wrong, but this is how they kind of compromise it. We're going to call you Miss Carl. And so, now, mind you, this is a straight club. This is not a gay club because there's not a lot of gay clubs in this area. Even in Jackson, it was only one, City Lights. Right. And then there was one that I knew in Meridian, Mississippi called Crossroads. But in this area, it just wasn't any gay clubs that I knew of, maybe. But so they had to be intermingled with the straight people. And so when we go to the club, I see who they talking about. Miss Carl. Miss Carl was definitely a trans woman. And the way they were treating Miss Carl, there was a othering, but it also was this was a part of our community. Oh, we know Miss Carl. And Miss Carl was dancing, doing the line dances with the people, everything in a part of the community. And yes, there was some othering, but it wasn't ostracization. It wasn't them pushing them out and making her, or not thinking of her as a part of the community. They're just it's a black sheep, but you still a motherfucking sheep. Yeah, you still a sheep, right? You know what I'm saying? And so tell me, growing up, I know that you hadn't transitioned early on, but you, how did that feel in regards to how you navigated queerness in Canton and in this time of your life?
Yes, absolutely. So I think I say folks all the time that we didn't have the language for what we were, and the community didn't have a language for what we were. Yeah, there were a lot of, things that were derogatory that were said, about who we were, but we didn't have that language. So for me, I've always been masculine. And we would call it tomboy, right? Like we would say you're a tomboy. And just like you were talking about Miss Carl, I was also welcomed in a lot of masculine spaces because they knew that's who I was, right? I had been so acclimated, or my neighborhood had been so acclimated around who I was and my masculinity that I could show up that fully. I didn't quite know the trans part, right? And I didn't quite know the queer part. I didn't know sexuality and all these things, especially early in age. And just kind of bring us back. My grandparents raised me, right? That's how I got the connection to Canton. And they came and got me when I was 3 or 4 months old because my parents didn't have the ability to take care of me. So there was also being raised in a household with a generation gap, right? It's my grandparents, and they got an idea of the world and how the world should work and how I should grow up and live my life. And of course, forced all those things on me. But I was, for the lack of a better word, I was different from the moment I could conceive what gender identity was, right? I was never feminine. I've always been masculine. Like, I just didn't have the word to attach to it. And just like you said, there, of course, was an othering because I wasn't the feminine girl growing up on the street with nothing but boys, and I wasn't really attracted to the boys in that way. I wanted to more or less, I wanted to come play basketball with y'all. I'm not trying to date y'all. Get off of me, ew. What are you doing? Where's your sister at? Type thing, So in that way, especially because of sports, I think sports was really like the way I got in and were able to be around cis men and masculine crowds without necessarily sticking out, right? I was celebrated because I was the person who was assigned female at birth, but had all these athletic standout and all these athletic abilities. And that's really what I dove head first in. Like athletics that let me be who I was, and it was celebrated, especially in this too, like in rural counties in Mississippi, all we have is sports.
Yeah.
That's all we have is sports, right? And so when I was able to be a standout in that area, I was also be extra masculine. Because they would say, oh, she just played basketball. She just played sports. She this, and the whispers of my sexuality, of course, would happen. But I was not welcome into the community. And ironically, we lost Nisha Caldwell back in 2017. And me and Misha grew up together. And Misha was like Miss Carl. Misha has always been feminine. But what happened again, there was this acceptance into the community because Misha was also the community hairstylist. If you wanted your hair done, you go see Misha, and we accepted and loved on her in a way that I think is transformative in many ways, right? It's like, I see this thing, I don't understand it, but this person we love and care about, they grew up with us. They're a part of our community, right? We may not treat them the best, but you don't get to come in from the outside either and treat them like shit. So there was still a certain level of, we see it, we may not agree with it, but you're a part of our community. And I think too, like, people don't, a lot of non-trans people, some of our, our naysayers and anti-trans people that have othered us, doesn't see that we've been interwoven in our communities this entire time. Who do you think let's be real, especially in the South, who are your choir directors? Right? Who are the band directors? Who are the hairstylists? Who are all these people who have been a part of our lives, and we have, gotten services from them or see them around town? Because again, Canada's a small town, so we damn near know everybody, So, but it's still a certain acceptance that we didn't talk about it. It just happened. Yeah. And when things began to be sensationalized, I think that started to polarize people. Because this shit, us being a part of this target, really didn't start till like 2015. Not to say that prior to that, we didn't have our issues and things going on and tax, but the 600 fucking bills this year, what? This type of attack didn't start happening until we became political ploys. Because before then, we were in society. We were assimilated with our communities, especially I'm going to say, because I stayed, my experiences from the South and growing up in the South. And I'm coming from many experiences, right? Like, I've been punched in the face by a white man because I was in an all-white space, the only black face in an all-white space. So I've had those experiences too. You know what I'm saying? However, we have always been here. We have always been a part of our communities, always a part of our family. All of us got a gay uncle or a gay, auntie or a gay family member. And not to say, again, not gay and trans not being synonymous with each other, but from where we're coming from. Right, queer in general, right? All of us have that in our family, and it's just now being more a part of the conversation.
Another thing that I wanted to kind of add here, just because we're on some Mississippi history shit, I want to talk about, well, not necessarily talk about, I want to share with y'all who are listening, the years that you're talking about with you and Misha. What years was this? Say it again.
You back.
Okay. So the years that you were talking about with Misha, what years was that?
That was, I want to say, we were middle school, early high school. For me, 95, 96, okay. 97.
So we're talking about 90s. There was a black trans man by the name of Jim McHarris that was born in Meridian, Mississippi in 1924. He was a laborer. And what we learned, how I learned about him is through Trans Griot, the late great Monica Roberts. One of the things that Monica did was she spent her time going through like Jet magazines, Ebony magazines, and really going through the digital archive and actually finding specific trans stories, which is why I love what I do and what she did. And that is because we had the eye to look for these specific things. And so she found in the 1954 Ebony, Jim McHarris. And Jim was raised by his family, initially by a foster family, after losing his parents. And he was raised as a teenager with his foster parents to kind of, they let him be free. And so he started to live his life as a boy. And he was saying that, I started to take like these masculine jobs. Now, mind you, he was born in 1924. So this is early 1900s. So when we talk about, we've been here, this is a perfect example of a Black trans Mississippian. And I brought this person because you are a Black trans Mississippi, masculine Mississippian trans man that is out here in this new era. But this has been going on. And so they had Jim McHarris moved to Chicago and kind of traveled around living his kind of trans masculine life. And anytime that he was outed in particular cities, he'll move somewhere else. And this was kind of the life of people who were trans in this time. And so, soon as I'm outed, I'm moving here. Soon as I'm outed, I'm moving to Memphis. Soon as I'm outed, I'm moving to Dayton. As soon as I'm outed, I'm moving to Chicago. And this is what Jim McHarris did for a very, very long time. But when he got older, when he got to like 1953, he returned to Mississippi, specifically Kosciuszko, Mississippi, which the famed Oprah Winfrey is from. He met one of his old friends and he became a preacher. And so somebody knew him from his old days. And when the Ebony interviewed her, she was like, he came up to me and said, don't be telling people I'm a woman. I'm a preacher now. Mind your business. Right. And so he's out here in the church as a preacher and, living this kind of like preacher life. And he ended up getting arrested for, he was driving under the influence and he was stopped by police. And when the alcohol was found in his car. So we don't know if he was drinking. We don't know what it is, but this is Mississippi. So we don't know what games they playing. And these is cops. So we don't know what games they was playing. We don't know what, but it led to his arrest. And when they searched him, he kind of was protesting. And then he because of what they were doing, he had to share his identity. And so they locked him up, not about the identity, about having the alcohol. And they strip searched him and charged him 30 days at a prison farm. So he went to prison for 30 days. And in the time, they still let him wear the men's uniform and was kind of like as one of the normal male prisoners, except they segregated him. They didn't allow him to be in with the male population, but they allowed him to dress and keep him in the male quarters. And this is another example of how people were figuring it out without all the rules and people, even in this time, this is 1953, even in this time when it wasn't the research and the knowledge and all the amazing things that we have now. Even in this time, people were figuring it out. We can't put you with the male population. We can put you with the male population, but we know we can't keep you there because you're not physically safe because of the body parts that you do have. So we're making the accommodation. This is Mississippi. In 1953, we are making the accommodations to your identity and your physicality and your safety, even as a criminal. We are making where usually criminals and their rights and their accommodations are taken out. So this is somebody who is being accommodated. Their identity and their gender identity is being accommodated in a prison industrial complex. So it was kind of an amazing story. Upon the release of Jim, he was like, I gotta leave town. I gotta leave here because it's Kosciuszko because now I'm outed. So my normal thing is I need to go. And so he ended up moving to Jackson, Mississippi. And he said that he in the interview he said that he continued to live his life as a man, and that's just what it was. He's like, in the last part of the interview, he was like, I ain't doing nothing wrong, not breaking no laws. This is just who I am. That this is who I'm going to be. And so him just living. So literally, this is a trans man who we don't know what happened to. We don't know how he died or anything like that, but we know that this person existed, and this little nugget of history is so powerful and so amazing. And so I wanted to bring the spirit of Jim in this conversation because just to make sure that we know as we archive your story that there is somebody who laid a foundation before you. And so I wanted to share that. What do you think about that?
That's powerful to know. And it also reinforces the fact that we can figure it the fuck out. Like, we can figure it out. Like,
science.
It's not rocket science. And I understand, because I now work in policy, I understand you want all the protections, you want all of the things, but I just want to be able to go to the store and be safe. I want to be able to go to the pharmacy and pick up whatever medication it is and pay a decent price for it. Like, I'm not asking, my people are not asking for anything that any non-trans person is not getting already, right? Like, we want fair access, and that's it. So I understand the policy. However, we've been doing this shit, and we've been demanding that it be done it's for many, many years without needing the public attention on it, right? Like, we have existed in these places. This is not new. Terminology is new. And that changes as we, every year it's something new and different. And I'm all for the expansiveness, right? But before we had terminology, it's people like Jim and many others that just existed. We hear the stories about Lucy Hicks Anderson. It was nothing you could not tell her that she wasn't a woman, period. Other than that little piece of paper that we all have to walk around with, right? So it just, again, I think that's, to me, to highlight those type of stories and go back in history and pulling them out shows people that we've always existed, and those existences are happening now. Just because people like you and I are advocates and outspoken about who we are, I want people to understand we do that so others don't have to. Not all of us are advocates and have to be.
And understand that, like, when we think about DEI, when we think about the inclusion part of that and wanting to be included in the table, I want you to understand that being included is just not about adding numbers to the table. Like, we need more black people, hire some black people. We need more trans people, hire some trans people. It's about preparing that table for these people when you do include them. It's about preparing that table and making that table ready for them to be there and being creative. And so I want you to understand that all this fucking shit is made up. And when you are inventing new spaces and being expansive and theorizing and doing all you need to do to make this world a better place, this shit is made up, and it does not require anybody's permission for you to do something fucking new, for you to do something different, and for you to change how you do things. You can be creative. And in this story, I think this is people trying to figure it out within the system of how they already had stuff set up, and they're figuring it out for this new type of being. And if they can do it in 1953, we can definitely do it in 2024. We coming on this, by the time this come out, the election is going to be over. So we'll see where we're at. But we can, but why I say that is, don't think that you are confined to rules and boxes. As trans people, I'm telling that you are not. We literally are in the face and said, nah, we ain't fucking with that, bro. We doing something different and something new. Be bold about your creativity, and don't feel you need permission to come up with theories and ideas and inventions and intentions about making this world a better place for the people that you are bringing to the table. That's Absolutely. If you're trans, queer, if you are cis, if you're straight, if you're trying to be a better person and create a better place, be creative. Don't be bold, and don't think that you need permission to do something new or try something different, or that it has to be perfect when you try it. You can figure it out as you go.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I 100% agree. And we have to not be afraid to fail sometimes too, right? I think that's a part of it. I think it's a fear that, especially, and this again is an I statement, for as an advocate to show up into these spaces and at those tables and be this perfect perfection of what they think transness is and this. No, fuck that. Sometimes it's messy. Getting to this place has been messy. It has not been an easy journey for all of us, right? And some of us have had privileges to have lots of access to the things that they need. So it has not always been pretty. And we have to, again, like you said, not be afraid to try different shit, invest in different things. And then if that ain't working, do something else. Do something else. But you have to keep going. You have to keep trying at that thing, right? And preparing that table, because the tables aren't ready for us to show up. That's why we keep saying we're going to create our own tables. We're going to create our own chairs, because the ones existing are not set up for us. But we could talk about that all day, because how many other marginalized people these systems are not set up for? Period. And if we keep on fighting against that part, we're going to keep bumping our head. We're going to have to learn how to redo the system, recreate the system, learn how it works, number one. Education is so important. And I don't feel like our community, Black folks particularly, not trans folks as much, but Black folks as particularly, educate ourselves enough about what's happening around us, right? Like I had an HVAC man stand in my house last week and told us, because my furnace went out, it's Democrats' fault. We figured that out. I don't know. He had a rationale in his world. It's Democrats' fault, so I need to vote Republican so I can get the supplies for my furnace when I need them and how I need them, because I guess Republicans control the shipments of shit from China. He had a rationale. But not only that, I should vote Republican because Kamala is going to provide surgery for the transgenders. Black man stood right in my house because you saw another black face and you're like, oh, I got somebody I can. No, bro, we're on two different pages. So I had to make we on right. So I had to make a decision right there in my home, where once I told this man what I wanted to tell him, he could have got violent in my home. But I was like, nope, we're not doing that today. So not only did I tell him who I was, I also corrected him and said, don't believe all the shit you see on TV, because your tax dollar hasn't paid for I'm a trans person, by the way, because you thought you were talking to a cisgender heterosexual man. Thank you for the compliment, I guess, but you thought you were talking to somebody, your buddy, I'm trans, and I'm sure not one of your tax dollars pay for not one part of my transition related care. So first of all, get educated and stop believing every fucking thing you see on TV and hear on TV. Especially not some ad from Trump. Come on now.
And you a black man, of all people, you should know how narratives don't be what it be.
Don't be what and you should know. And you should know. So again, like I really want black people to really educate ourselves and not going with the first thing that's sensationalized in media, right? You should have been doing your research about this campaign to figure out what, and that's any campaign, right? If you're a voting person, you should be doing research about who you're voting for, period. And make sure those things align with your values. But I think it's just it's an education gap with my black folks that hurts me so bad.
Prior to transition, you were in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And you were in the military during the time of the kind of don't ask, don't tell. It was definitely a culture in that situation. Can you reflect on that experience? And I know this is also the time that you kind of started to question your sexuality and gender identity in regards to how you were going to go forward. Tell me about that transition. Tell me about that experience.
And it's ironic that in the culture of don't ask, don't tell, that's why I started to figure out especially my sexual identity, right? And it was a culture shock, which so many things are. And as we started this conversation with where I'm from, being from small town, Kent, Mississippi, of course, with connections to Jackson, most things in the world are a culture shock for me. because of just the lack of diversity. Like I grew up in an all black town, all black high school, all of those things. So going to the military, actually, I signed up when I was 17 and started having those experiences. It was a culture shock for me, and seeing all these different kinds of people, tones of people, colors of people, and all of these things. I knew right then that life was bigger than Mississippi in general, and what we know, a lot of Mississippians don't leave. We don't leave. We'll leave for a little while and go back.
Well, that's period. Most people don't leave their place that they grew up in. That's
especially very uncommon, right? So just getting to leave and see what life was like, I wanted to have experiences too, right? I'm out here in the world, seeing different people, different things that I've never been exposed to. This is probably the first time I had even slept near a white person, like all these things, right? So I was like, I like this. And as I started to get more comfortable in those worlds and be able to talk with different people, I started to figure myself out. I was like, so this thing that's been likened to being a tomboy, what is it really is? And then just like in athletics, in the military, as a person assigned female at birth, you're praised for being extra masculine. You're praised for being able to do the PT test and complete them faster than cisgender men. You're praised for that. So yet again, I was in another welcoming space where my masculinity was celebrated, so to speak, right? It made me different, don't get me wrong. And there was a lot of expectations too that came from that as well, like a lot of leadership expectations, which I think is tied into just the patriarchy that the world runs off of. Like, you're a masculine woman, so you're supposed to be a leader, right? So a lot of leadership opportunities came my way due to that. But just growing up in that particular time of the military, regardless if they wanted to don't ask, don't tell us, it was indeed happening, right? It was indeed where a lot of us was figuring ourselves out, even in the lack of language, if not having the language for it. So absolutely, my sexual identity is when I really, military is when I really started to experience it and explore it, and came in 2 years of my military career, came out as lesbian back then.
It's funny. Yeah. You just talked about how because of your masculinity at the time, like people were like, I expect, because you are doing these amazing things, I expect you to be a leader. I expect you to do these things. And then I think about like the opposite side when you think about the more feminized men or boys. And I remember my grandmother would say things like how because I was this feminine thing, she expected me to be super organized. She expected me to beautify everything. She expected me to do all of these kind of things. And it's funny how those are the expectations. But as soon as you declare, I'm a woman or I'm a man, then it's like, oh no, It's like, before I declared it, it was like you was down with putting me in these kind of boxes, and it was kind of like normal for, like, if you think about like even like Samoan or the Fafafini, and how they like, oh well, we know what we got a space in our culture for this, and this is what you do. But soon as you declare it, it's like, now we gotta resist it. Instead of making room for it, instead of adjusting to it, now it's like, oh no, we can't accept it now. But y'all was making these exceptions when I wasn't making a declaration.
Exactly. I agree. Which is so ironic. Like, y'all were celebrating when I was on the basketball court and doing all the things, and in the ROTC and in the Army, and being super masculine tomboy to y'all. But as soon as I started growing facial hair, no, we can't do it. You're too masculine. What's going on here? So I agree. It's definitely my experience too.
So another Mississippi connection that I wanted to, historical connection that I want to make before to kind of lead us into the next part of the conversation. Have you heard of Wilbur Broadax?
Yes.
Okay. So Wilbur Broadax. So for people who are listening, Wilbur Broadax is a Black trans man who made his career being in a gospel quartet by the name of Golden Echo. So when we think about those kind of Mississippi, the Blind Boys of Mississippi, those kind of really gospel quartets, that kind of that classic gospel that was in an era in the 50s and 60s and 70s and all that kind of stuff. There was a trans man who was leading vocally in these moments, and he was Stylz. And so what was going on was one of his younger brothers passed away, and he took on his identity. Yeah. And so he started to sing in these choirs and in these quartets, and he made a career out of being this high-pitched tenor. And so it was an amazing story that I think if you look it up, and I'm gonna put some of the links in the bottom, make sure you look it up. And why I wanted to talk about him, because he started in this kind of Memphis, Mississippi area. He's from Texas, but his career started to blow up in this kind of Mississippi area. Now, he lived until the early 90s. In 1992, his partner stabbed him. And so they were having a spout, and later found out, that, just what was some jealousy situation, and he was jealous, and him and his partner got into it, and she ended up stabbing him and, killing him. And because of that, they have to do the autopsy. And literally, that is when they found out that he was assigned female at birth. And so stories like this are really, really fucking common. Like, when we go back, and usually they're just told like you locally. So when I go to archives, I'm looking for things. There are so many times that I have found stories about trans men who have married their wives, and they are living this typical, from the outside looking in, this typical cisgender life. And then when they pass away, they find out that this is actually a trans couple. This is actually a trans person is in this company. And so I wanted to talk about domestic violence, and I wanted to talk about, because in the research that I have done and created, I tell people all the time, you can do research. And I'm not talking about like Googling. I'm talking about I have created research and created databases for people to use in grants and in I literally have done this work for people to know about how this issue is affecting trans people. And now, of course, when we think about the murders, homicides of trans people, the people who are top on the list is Black. But if you take trans women out of it, just look at the trans men, there is a lot of time that cops are killing trans. There's 40% of the cases that we studied in our database, 2017, 2002, 40% of them were killed by cops on mental health calls. We know suicide is high in Black. But intimate partner violence is really, really. So when we think about the masculine experience, a lot of times it is kind of stereotypical to think that because the person is the more masculine one in the coupling, that's going to be the more violent. But sometimes that is not the case, and we have to think about, while there may be some similarities in other people's experiences, we got to think about the nuance that Black trans experience to relationships and how their identity used against them, weaponized against them, object call, all this kind of stuff. So I want you to tell me, what is your, you're in a happily beautiful marriage now, but I want you to tell me some of the experiences that you have heard about or that you have experienced in your past, and what is your thoughts around trans masculinity and domestic violence, intimate partner violence?
So I think part of it is there's no rule book to this thing, Diamond. Like there's no, of course we got how to get HRT and all those things, right? But there is no rule book to masculinity. Therefore, a lot of us that don't have masculine father figures, so to speak, in our lives to kind of teach us those things that one would have taught their son or someone who was assigned male at birth, to steer us to how to navigate relationships as a masculine person and also as presenting to the world, like for the lack of any other term, like as a man, a black man, number one, regardless of the transness or not, there's no one teaching us these things, right? So we are really out here. Of course, for me, I've taken examples of men, from the past and men in my current life, both cis and trans. I've taken attributes and say, hey, I like this thing that this person does. So let me make that a part. I like, the way that Martin Luther King does this thing. So let me take this, when I'm thinking about all the many pieces of who I wanted to show up as in my manhood, right? Because I did not have, my grandfather was an amazing man, hardworking man, in a part of my life always. But my father still to this day is resistant, right? And it's still not a part of my life. So I'm figuring this shit out on my own. I'm figuring out what it means to be. And again, I stated to be a man in my relationship, right? Without the backdrop of patriarchy. Because I don't, for my partner is just as well versed and headstrong and all the things. So she's not going for that shit. And most women, trans or not, ain't going for that shit, right? So relationships now, are more communicative, they're more, all of us have access to therapy, all these things that we didn't talk about or you didn't see in your houses, as you were growing up. My grandparents didn't go to therapy. They worked it out right there in their homes, right? I didn't, and again, my father has never been a part of my life. So we are having to make this thing as we go. And some of that is picking up some of the bad shit too, right? Some of that is not working out. Some of the, the traumas, the triggers, the anger that you had even before you started to transition. Because a lot of us were hurt little boys taking testosterone and have grown into hurt men, right? And a lot of that is not necessarily connected to our transition because we have access to all of that. But now that I'm a man and showing up in the world, like I've always been a man, but showing up in the world as a man and the man in the world sees me as a man, now I got to deal with some of that other shit, right? I got to deal with some of that. And we can fight all day about this term, but I think it holds some validity about that toxic masculinity shit. Like, what pieces of it is toxic, right? Because I believe some level of anger, if that's what you want to call a toxic piece of it, deserves its space. Because as long as we push the anger down and avoid the anger, what does it do? Stack on top of each other, then it explodes. I think there's healthy ways to express anger, to express frustration that does not equal in intimate partner violence. That should not end in intimate partner violence. I get to be angry with my wife. I'm human and she can piss me off. But how I express that to her, how we have a conversation about what happened and how I connect that to my feelings and a solution, what makes the difference in something equaling into intimate partner violence. But guess what, Diamond? I had to learn that. Because 5 years, 10 years ago, I would be picking up tables and throwing cell phones all across the room. And those are not the healthy ways to handle anger, especially in my relationships, right? So I think for a lot of us, we have not learned those healthy coping mechanisms because we don't have many examples. We talk about possibility models all the time. For me, growing up in rural town, Canton, Mississippi, I didn't have no possibility models. The only possibility for me was to go to high school, but I wasn't even expected to go to college. My possibility to go to high school and get a job in some factory. And that's what I do for the remainder of my life. At a chicken plant, right? That's what I'm supposed to do with my life, right? So again, we don't have, a lot of us, especially from the rural South, and Black folks and Black men don't have those positive possibility models to pattern ourselves off of So we get into these relationships and we're hell bent on control. I don't need to control my wife, you know, but we have been raised from that, right? You're a man, you're the owner of the home, you control the wife, and this all of these things that have been forced down to us. We as trans men start to take on that shit because that's what we saw growing up too. Right? We saw if we didn't have a father, we saw our uncles and our, other cousins. For me, especially, I grew up in the hood. Let's be clear too. Like I grew up in the hood, point blank. Projects right down the street. I grew up in the hood, so I didn't have those positive possibility models. I had to make this for myself, and then I also had to give myself permission to do that too. I don't think we often, as trans men, give ourselves permission to be another way in our masculinity, right? Or have our masculinity show up in any other way than violent, than controlling. We don't have to be that way. We don't have to. And something I learned at actually BTAC, where we really met each other at, and it's really stayed in my belly for many years, is that trans men in particular have an opportunity to change how the world views masculinity. Trans men do, and if we were to take up that race, or take it some space in that space, and realize that we can change what masculinity looks like for the entire culture, because we are exemplified and it comes in many different shapes. I don't claim to be alpha male. I'm not the hardest guy. I'm not that guy, and many of us who are on that spectrum, right? We all come in different shapes, size, and to be honest, in 2024, we are out and loud about it. I know many gay trans men. I know many non-binary trans masculine folks. I know many binary trans men, and we're all very vocal about who we were. When I first started doing this, you had to be one way, binary. Use binary, super masculine, alpha male trans men, and that was the only way to do it. So we have to continue to break those stigmas, continue to realize that we don't have to be just one way, and that we can change the game for what masculinity, we as in trans men can change the game as to how masculinity is viewed, perceived, accepted, and all those things. But just like to the original question, I had to make the rule book myself. I had to learn those coping mechanisms myself, so that I was not showing up very angry in my relationships, and those, of course, lead into some intimate partner violence situation. But I've had my share too, because I had to get there. It's a journey.
What I want to point out is this is two trans people talking to you about this kind of nuance in controlling, your anger and coming to it with a different way. But it goes back to what I said in regards to being creative about your theory and your practice of how you do this shit. Listen, we all this shit is made up. And so how we are all navigating it is going to be different. We are talking about it from a trans perspective. So therefore we're going to have this acute kind of picking through gender. There's going to be like a magnet that we are kind of emphasized, but don't think you as a cisgender person aren't picking things from people, how you want your womanhood to show up. You too are picking things from women that you admire. If you're a cisgender woman and you get what I'm saying, that you're navigating the world, there are women that you admire that you are picking things from, whether it be your mom, whether it be your church auntie, whether it be this girl at work, whether it be the stripper at the club who you like her body and her sexual prowess and her confidence in regards to her body and how she moves through the world. All these women are impacting you, whether you're taking something from them or you're not taking something from them. You are building this kind of Voltron of the idea of who you want to be in the world. And that is mixing with all the things so what you want to be, the picture of yourself of what you want to be, that is mixing with all the systems that say you are something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get what I'm saying? What you look like, all the things, all the outside world and what you can't control. You are actually, it's all mixing, and you're figuring out a way of how to navigate this world with all these things happening at once and how it's balancing within you. This is not just a trans fucking thing that's fucking happening. It is you doing it too. It's just that because you align more with the norm, it's not explored as much as us because we are going against the grain. And so it's like, you know, when we think, I kind of liken it to when people say, why don't nobody ever, it's more people that send the bad reviews and call to complain about the negative stuff, where if something good happened, you don't call and tell them it good happened. Yeah, because I'm used, not saying that it shouldn't be balanced, but I'm used, this is how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to get a good service at the restaurant. So while, yes, I should be more diligent in giving positive reviews, it is the negative thing when it's not going how it's supposed to be, that is going to make me more angry and passionate, or I'm going to give you a 1 star and da-da-da-da-da-da. That's kind of common. And it's the same thing with this. I liken it to that, where because we are going against the grain, it's more of a bright light shined on it, where opposed to you who is not going against grain, who is going with the flow, it's not called out as much. But you too are navigating these gender ideas and navigating how you want to show up in the world. And this shows up in how you engage with your partner, the expectations of your partner, the expectations of you as a man or a woman within your relationship, how the world sees you. Like if you're a man that doesn't make a lot of money, but your mindset is, I'm supposed to be the provider in the relationship, but you not making a lot of money because the outside world, the economics of the outside world, you in a place that you can't have a amazing job and blah, 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 blah. So now you feel less than a man. And so how are you navigating that kind of balance, that imbalance of what you expect and what you don't actually what you can actually be? Exactly. And so are you going to abuse your wife because you are insecure about this stuff? Are you going to be out here? Maybe it doesn't show up as physical abuse, but because you don't feel adequate with the woman that you love, you go out here and cheat on her with tons of women because you tricking off money so they can make you feel good as a man, because your wife is a reminder that you're not living up to whatever standard, blah, 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 blah. I'm just giving you examples. Right. You too are navigating this space, and you gotta like Sybastian just said, you gotta come up with a different way, a more mature way in how you are expressing yourself, how you are navigating these problems and this imbalance with solutions that are healthy, that are not destroying your relationships, that are not destroying your self-esteem and your self-image. How are you creatively coming up against these systems and making it work in a way that's healthy for not only you, but also the people that you are in community with, that you want to be in community? So I wanted to share that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I 100% agree. And I think some of those folks that are in those situations where they have made this expectation for themselves, because believe it or not, it's fake, it's not real. We should all set expectations for ourselves, and whatever this idea of this goal of who men are and what they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to show up in their relationship and be the providers, we've all put that pressure on ourselves, and society has made us believe that. However, I think individually, your home should work how it should work. If my wife made more money than me and she was the primary breadwinner in our home, guess what? I'm gonna clean, I'm gonna cook, I'm gonna do all the other things so she can continue to bring that, take care of our home, and it's not a hit to my masculinity. Once we start breaking down that toxic shit, right? Like about what really is masculinity, right? And is it real? Is any of these concepts real, or have we as human beings now put attributes to certain things to make them be real concepts, right? I'm not looking to be in my house and be an over expression of masculinity. I don't walk around with my chest popped out. That's not who I am in my life. And I'm willing to believe that most men are not that in their homes, right? So again, like you said, it's about a relearning. It's about an unlearning first, and then a relearning and applying, keeping what applies to you, and throwing away that other shit. Like, I don't agree with how my dad shows up in the world. So guess what I did? I threw that shit away. I am nothing like him for the most part, right? There are some pieces of him that I did chose to keep, because it's a part of my family and my lineage and all those things. But I challenge all of us to all of those things that have been force fed to us and told us about who we are and how we should show up. And I'm talking to cis, trans, and anything in between people. Take that shit, start unlearning it, throw away what you don't need, throw away what does not apply to your life, and watch how life turns around for you. Watch how you then forget. I'm the captain of my own plane. And it took me a while to get there because for a long time, anger, regret, neglect, mama, daddy hurt was the captains of my plane. And I had to turn that around. They still in the cockpit, right? They still in the back seat, but now I'm the captain and I can choose how those things show up in my life and how I move forward from those and not make the people around me suffer because of how I was hurt, because of my trauma. We hear it all the time. We're responsible for our own triggers.
Yeah. So the U.S. Supreme Court issued its ruling on the case of Dobbs and Jackson and overturned abortion rights for all female-bodied people, birthing people.
Mm-hmm.
And it paved the way for all of these state kind of abortion bans. Last time me and you hung out in person, well, one of the last times, we were in Chicago and you brought up how, you were working at Planned Parenthood and you just were having like some issues, even in these community spaces where, it should be more inclusive. It should be more understanding that, I might be somebody you want to include in these kind of conversations. It was kind of like some pushback because of how you were presenting. And so can you describe that and that experience the way you were describing it to me there in Chicago?
Sure, absolutely. So I think mostly what it is that, all of us have parts we need to take care of.
Period.
Bottom line. We got parts we need to take care of. So in that way, there's an overlap when it comes to reproductive health that happens with cisgender women and what needs to happen with transmasculine folks and trans men. And we often don't talk about it because I think the elephant in the room is the sexuality piece, right? Because the understanding is that you transition to a man, so you're binary and you are sexually involved with women and that's it, right? But we know that that's not the case. We know that sexuality is on a spectrum. We know all of the things as it relates to sexuality. And there are trans men out here that are gay, who are bisexual, pan, poly, and all the other things. And I think a lot of times when we get in these reproductive spaces talking about abortion, we fail to realize that, as you stated earlier, birthing people are inclusive of trans men or anyone that has the parts of the systems to birth children, right? And if we don't have those conversations, then that erases us from the space and from us having access to those services as well. Like I said, I've worked in the belly of the beast of abortion. So I have been from the emergency room. I have been from the operating room to the recovery room and everything in between. I worked at a clinic that we did abortions up to 22 weeks. So I have seen the gamut of the process. I have seen the age range. And not only that, I have handheld trans men and trans masculine folks and even some masculine females to the operating table. But yet we don't hear about those stories because, again, it's taboo for our sexuality to also be on those spectrums, right? To also want to desire to have our own children, our own kids, and be a part of family planning. And we don't talk about it a lot. We even see an emergence now of trans men having their own babies, like birthing their own children. And I think when we had that conversation, it was unheard of. This is still something fairly new. So again, it's about really breaking down and unlearning all the things we've learned about sex and relationships and family planning and what families and how families are created. If anything, the queer community, I would think, would be the most understanding, right? Because we've created families of our own. We've always done it. Since the beginning of queerness, right? Of course, I know, queer was derogatory at one point, but since we've existed, we've always created our own families. So to get here now and to see trans men desiring family planning options and reproductive health options, and we get the side eye like that ain't what you're supposed to be you doing. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be binary this and that and have all the things. So I think for me to be in those spaces, and often I'm still to this day in 2024, often I'm one of very few in those spaces still. I think it's always important to highlight the experiences of trans men and trans masculine folks as it relates to abortion and also as it relates to family planning and reproductive health as a whole. Because we're still not talking about it appropriately, in my opinion.
When I think about that, I'm thinking about what it allows room for. So like when you are coming to a space, a space where I'm at risk of, giving birth, and somebody could use that as, see, you're still a woman, regardless of da 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 da. They can use that to attack your identity. But also, that's from the outside. It also, from the inside, it can just be triggering. It can just be triggering your dysphoria. Like, oh my God, I'm fucking pregnant because I still got these parts that I am disconnected to, in regards to my identity. There's some incongruency. And so, but they're on my body. So I am naturally connected to it. And so because I'm out here doing things that can procreate, and so it's about making sure that the person is in a space where I can actually come and talk to people about this, to where it is, how do we get to the point where it is not triggering for me to talk about my body parts and what they can and cannot do and the possibilities and da 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 da. And if I am in a situation, I can come into a space that is safe and a space that has people that understand, and it's not triggering me to the point where, oh my God, I don't even want to come in there and have these issues, where you don't make sure that people who are there to care for me, care for my type of person, know about the nuances, because that alone can put somebody at risk. Not only the ban on the abortion, just the fact I can't come to somebody about it without being triggered, without feeling like I'm less of a man or less of a human being, or this freak, or more of this kind of freak other motherfucker, because I'm out here doing what I'm doing. Right. So both of these aspects of the outside people invalidating my manhood, the outside people reducing me down to body parts just because I got pregnant, all of these and this is somebody as a non-birthing person. I'm not speaking for them, but this is how I contextualize it in my own mind as somebody trying to understand as a trans person. I'm trying to look at how I would be if I was in that situation. And these are the things that comes up in my mind. And this is somebody, I am not at risk of having a baby. But for me, that's what I think about. I can see how these can be barriers to the proper care. I can see how these could be barriers on both sides of the coin, as a trans person coming in for care and as a person who is giving the care. And and then I remember you telling me about how you came into the room. You were a caregiver. You came into the room with a cisgender woman who was getting an abortion. And later on, they kind of put a review about the services about you because they assumed that you were a man or you were a person who didn't understand and blah, 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 blah. Tell me about that kind of nuance and why it's really valuable to see us as a resource, because this kind of nuance that we bring to the table can enrich the services at these facilities.
Exactly. So number one, to be honest with you, it was hurtful because I have been working in that setting for many years, and there's no other thing that I wanted to do is take care of whatever people that come into that space, right? I've always been the person of, I know it for some folks, it's an unfortunate situation that, while you're here, but you're here now. So let's make this service just like any other service. Just like I know it's different, but just like you going to the dentist, just like you going to your primary care doctor, let's make this service just as comfortable as you need it to be. But I also think that what happens in the society, because we have so many people, they don't expect to see different types of people in these spaces. You don't often even as a male presenting person, You don't see a lot of us in the GYN space at all. But what I have, and I've had this conversation with my partner as well, because she goes kind of back and forth about having a cis male or female, or male or female cis or trans physician see her. And I have an indifferent opinion about it because I've worked with both male and female physicians, right? And when it comes to GYN care, my experience is that a male physician that is really like centered on the issue and knows what happens is going to treat a woman much different than a female physician, especially in a GYN setting, because number one, he knows that he does not completely understand because of experience what the woman is going through. He does know because of his education what she's going through. So it's a different level of understanding there, right? So for me, as I started to transition in that space, I began to be like that man, right? Hey, like, I am here to protect you. And I wanted to always make sure the clients that came in knew that I was here for their protection. Because again, being a Black male sometimes is synonymous with fear, to something to be feared. And sometimes I look like the very guy that got you in this situation, or I'm that example of what got you in this situation. So my spirit became one that was very welcoming. That, hey, come in, I know you're here. You know, all the things I said earlier. But it got to the point to where when that incident happened, I realized that diversity, inclusion, and equity is so extremely important. But next to that, we also all deserve our own spaces, right? We also deserve to feel welcomed, comfortable, and safe in those spaces. And the last thing I would want to do is make a woman or anyone or a birthing person that's having abortion on a table feel unsafe. So I had to take some ownership in that too, right? Even though that thing stung me and hurt me like nothing, because I knew I wasn't there to harm her, I still had to respect the fact that this woman felt unsafe. And what can I do going forward to make sure other women feel safe around me? Because that's not me. And I had to take myself out of it because it wasn't personal. To me, it wasn't Sebastian, you're an evil guy and you were going to come in there and hurt me. No, that was to all the guys that had ever hurt her. Right? And how can I take that and use that to navigate my career, navigate around women, cis or trans? And that's my guiding star when I'm around trans women in particular, right? That's my guiding star, is that I know that a lot of the hurt and pain, I know it wasn't caused by me, but it was caused by somebody that looked like me. So how can I show up in this space and change their perception for you and help you feel safe and know that you feel safe around me? And hopefully that would, continue in other spaces, right? So it was a learning lesson for me. Although it hurt, although my ego was bruised from it, ultimately I understood that it was not me personally. It was from hurt and trauma and pain that other men had done to that young lady. And it just was me that had to bear the brunt of it.
And aren't we expecting that kind of intentionality, that understanding and intentionality from other people? When we think about what we expect from white people, when we think about what we expect from men, you are expressing an example, a shining example to me of how somebody can not be so sensitive to where they're making it personal, like a personal attack when somebody is confronting an issue that is a problem in the world. And you can say, I'm going to show up different. I'm going to show up more intentional about how can I make a safer place for this person in this particular scenario. And we are expecting and explaining that to white people. We are explaining that to men. We are expecting that to gay people who don't understand the trans experience. We are expecting that from so many people. And why we have the ideology that if you include people, they're coming from an experience that can actually help you navigate how to be a better person in the world. Like it literally, what you're expressing is a perfect shining example of that. How I cannot make it about me and how I can understand the scenario that I'm in and make some adjustments. It goes back to what I was saying about being creative, about how you theorize being the change that you want to see, and how you show up to the practice of that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Gimme euphoria, more than peace of mind. It's the
Can you tell me what is bringing you euphoria this week?
What is bringing me euphoria this week is that we are about to elect our first Black female president. It's gonna fucking happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. That's what's bringing me euphoria. And I think part of the euphoria is if I don't think positively about it and think about it the other way, I'm gonna be sad for the next 7 days and stressed out. And I refuse to not do that. I refuse to stay focused, stay optimistic, stay doing, of course, the work side of it. So still hammering in on that side of it. But yeah, I'm feeling extremely hopeful. I know that even, once we have victory next week, the journey is not over. I know it's still, and I think that part is bringing me euphoria as well. I'm thinking about how many opportunities that we'll have to change some policy. Like, the policy is running us, is what, ultimately the laws are based upon. But I do see an opportunity for us to do some things, right? And we said that with other administrations, and I think we're better poised now. I think we have so many great, amazing advocates that are doing work, so many spokespeople, all these things that we're able to really make some changes, in this administration. I don't know if we'll see it realized in our administration, because in this one, because you know how that happens, you may not see it till 2 or 3 years in, right? But I'm really trying to stay hopeful and being really happy and euphoric about the possibility and the potential of what could happen next week and beyond. It's just staying hopeful for that. I think that's what's the most happening for me right now.
And in the spirit of, I know this is going to air later on, so whatever the consequences, whatever the outcome and result, I think for me, what is bringing me euphoria this week is today I did vote. I did vote for the first Black woman that could potentially be our president. And that was a historic moment. I felt good. I actually, because I've already voted now, I early voted, I feel like I feel like more light. Like, oh my God, I've already done what I needed to do. I've done my part. And so I also feel like, since this is the future. In the moment, this is the future. If it does not turn out the way we want it to, we survived the Trump presidency. We survived the Bush presidency. And yes, there was a downturn. But if you remember, when the Bush presidency happened and there was a downturn, we had a Obama. I'm not saying that he's perfect, but there was an upturn in the economy that was really amazing. And so I plan, no matter what administration that is in office, I plan to do what I've been doing in trying to push them to be better and be more creative, be more impactful. There's not much is going to change in my strategy. I know that I'm going to, regardless of who it is, in the moment right now, it's going to come out when whoever's going to be about changing power in January. Yes. I know that I'm going to be doing what I need to do to make them do better, regardless of who it is. And so the joy of having a vote and having a say in the place that I live, in the place that my ancestors fought and died for, and not just know I'm fucking in reverence to that. It's really, really important to me that motherfuckers know, especially in light of these kind of conversations that I'm hearing out of Black British circles, where they're talking about, people are saying that we don't have culture or we don't know where we're from as Black American. I feel like this is my home. I don't need to know, exactly. I know I'm African American. I know that my ancestors came from Africa, but because of the 400 or 500 years that we have been on this land, this is my land. This is where I was birthed. This is, and this doesn't throw away Native American people, but in my brain, I feel like this is the home that I know. This is the land that I know. I didn't choose to be here. My ancestors didn't choose to be here. But this is the just like you have a scar on your body that's just fucking there and you can't fix it. That's just it. The scar is there. And so I can't fix it. And so all I can do is move forward to make it better for all parties involved. Right. And so I feel like that my vote matters and voting is important because this is the system that we live in. And it's important for me to express it and let my people know, my ancestors know that I appreciate it from whoever did what they needed to do to lay their life down for me to have this right. I am going to practice it for every chance that I get. So that having the chance to practice it is what brought me joy this week.
Same for me. I early voted too, so done.
So, Sybastian, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You are one of my favorite people, and I appreciate what you do and what you bring to the table. I want to.
Absolutely. I hope I can come back. I hope we can do this again. You know, I'm always here. Always one call away. Always. You know, I love you.
Thank you. Tell the people where they can find you.
So people can find me if you do the social media thing. You can find me on Facebook by my name, Sybastian Smith, and it's actually spelled differently. So Sybastian is spelled S-Y, like Yankee, B-A-S-T-I-A-N, last name Smith, S-M-I-T-H. So you can find me on all platforms using my name. And I'm also, again, I work at Advocacy for Trans Equality. So if you're looking for me, check out our website, transequality.org, and you can find me there.
I'm going to put all that stuff in the bottom. I'm so happy. Okay. Thank y'all for listening, and we will talk to y'all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
I make it easy to love me. I make it easy to care for me. I make it easy to share all your world with me. And if you have the best of both worlds, it still wouldn't be